Alright, what's up guys? So, seated leg curl here was the first exercise of the leg workout. It was A1. We did 3 sets of roughly 5 repetitions. If I'm going to give you like an actual program range, anywhere from 5 to 12 is cool. And how do you decide whether you're on the lower part of that range or the higher part of that rep range? Well, honestly, I can't make that decision for you. Part of it is preference, part of it is what kind of like rep range you're used to training in. I would advise you kind of staying there. And part of it is like your ability to contract. So if you have a harder time finding a working muscle, sometimes longer durations of sets helps. If you are really good at contracting, if you have a lot of tissue on your body, sometimes lower ranges of that rep range are a little bit better. That choice is completely up to you. I don't want to divert too much from what the point of this video is. This is just kind of a quick overview of some things that I think will immediately help you with the seated leg curl here. For me, my why for getting into the seated leg curl, especially first, is in my opinion, the seated leg curl is the best exercise you can do for the most direct hamstring work without other things helping you along the way. In comparison to something like the RDL, it's almost incomparable in my opinion. Now we're talking strictly in the context of, am I able to dictate tension to the hamstrings and only the hamstring for the most part? I think this is the best place to do so for a couple of reasons, but mainly because of the ability to brace and the stability that this exercise offers. Okay, so what are a couple things that I think people overlook in the seated leg curl? First comes in simple stuff with the setup. Every single machine that has a hinge, whether it's at your knees or it's at your elbows, has a hinging point. And the hinge of your knees in this case needs to match the hinge of this leg curl. And then whatever that pivot point is, wherever that joint is that's hinging, make sure that your knee joint is hinging at that spot. So my knee should be hinging right along with this machine the entire range of motion. If it's not, it's a bad setup and you need to adjust my seat accordingly, okay? Second thing is this foot pad. I see a lot of people doing leg curls where the foot pad is rolling up and down the calf. It shouldn't be like that. You need to find a foot pad position that's somewhere between like the bottom of your calves and the Achilles and kind of where your shoe is or your sock is, where it doesn't roll. It just stays put. It goes through its circular motion and it's not moving. It's really that simple, okay? Another thing is the tightness of this pad. This is your stability. This is your opposing force. Your hamstrings are opposite of this. They're underneath your thigh opposing this. You need to be able to drive up into this, or you need this thing to be able to drive down into you. I see a lot of people have too much free play in here where the thigh is able to move up and down, and that's just giving opportunity for other things to kind of cheat you out of dictating tension in your hamstrings. Remember, it doesn't matter what exercise you're doing, your body doesn't want to isolate a function to just one muscle group. So if we're going in here and calling on just our hamstrings to do the majority of this work, your body, you don't have a good awareness of how to brace and stay isolated, is going to find every creative possible way it can to get out of that because it's so energy expensive and it's really not that safe. It's kind of dangerous for it. It's trying to save and conserve itself. It's trying to survive. Building muscle is not a way of surviving. Building muscle is a way of adapting to the stimulus of saying, hey, this has the potential of really hurting my body. So realize isolation is actually not a good thing from a functioning and energy saving standpoint. Okay, again, I'm going off the road here, but that's why we're here. Okay, now, in addition, one thing that I can think really benefit a lot of you guys is some seated leg curls are like this one, where they kind of arch out. Some are straight out. And that's really not that important, but realize I'm a big advocate of everything around my pelvis is in a position where it's actively safe and it's actively able to contract. So what you need to do is you need to know how far can my body actually flex at the hips and my knee actually still have function, which is basically me just kind of lifting my leg without my pelvis moving, and that's about it. My hamstrings feel super stretched in that position. My quad feels super contracted. That is the farthest point of hip flexion where I can do this knee flexing action. If I go into this machine and I exceed that, where do you think that excess is going to come from? It's going to come from my low back, okay? And do you think that your hamstrings are going to function at a high level if your pelvis is all whopper jaw and your low back is all out of whack? No. So make sure you're getting into a position in this leg curl to where you can get in here and you can be as far into your active range of hip flexion as you possibly can. And the reason why is we're trying to work our hamstrings through their knee bending action and as close to a fully lengthened position for the hamstrings at the top as we possibly can. So an easy way that I always check, let me adjust this, is when I get in here and get set, okay? I kind of contract my quads, kind of get everything braced. Can I lift my leg? If I can lift my leg at my hip, I know I still have activity around that pelvis. My pelvis is still in a position where I'm able to have stability here so I can have output around my knees. That's a very, very kind of like specific deep dive, but it's a major, major detail in like what's making or breaking like your hamstrings actually working and other things making up for the fact that they can't work at a high level. You may feel a sensation going through your hamstrings, but if they're not in a mechanical position to actually function most, they're not going to. So make sure you're not messing up in your setup like that, taking away from their ability to actually contract, okay? Last thing. So we want to have some sort of control throughout the entire range of motion. Understand that your hamstrings are not the only knee flexor on your body. Your calves are, your gastroc is. Your gastroc has a really good ability to launch things through space. The big thing that I see a lot of times is this acceleration on the top. I realize that the hamstrings are powerful in this range of motion, but it needs to be a control aggression. If we're getting this weight floating, we're not using that resistance to create an internal tension. All we're doing is creating a movement. And movement doesn't lead to actual muscle building. Movement doesn't lead to trauma. Movement is just movement. Movement is efficient. We want non-efficient movement. We want isolated movement. So what I suggest that you do is spend as much time in your warm-up sets in this lengthened position, just finding your hamstrings. You can see I've taken that resistance and kind of put it on my hamstrings. I'm trying to identify the difference between what does it feel like when my calves are actually taking this load, what's it feel like when my hamstrings actually take that load. And when I identify my hamstrings, then I actually start to complete that leg curling motion. With that sensation of my hamstrings having load, intensity, tension in them, I never let it go. If I let it go, the only thing left to take that tension, the only thing left to take that resistance that's pushing up is going to be the calf. And almost 10 times out of 10, if you start your leg curl motion with your calf, you're going to launch. You're going to take away all kinds of time under tension, all kinds of opportunity for your hamstrings to actually have work. And that's why we're here, for the hamstrings to work 100% of the time, from rep 1 to rep whatever you choose, in this case, 5 reps, okay? So that's a little bit of a deep dive into the things that I'm thinking about with my hamstring curl. We can go into more specificity, but I think a couple things people are missing out on is setup. They're missing out on making sure that things are actively able to work from the pelvis down. They're missing out on bracing a little bit. They're definitely missing out on the style of tempo you need to be in to make sure that the hamstrings are actually functioning. So try it out, see how it helps you, and stay tuned. We got another video coming.